What other team do you see yourself playing for?
With the 27th pick in the 2016 NBA Draft, the Toronto Raptors select Pascal Siakam from Douala, Cameroon, and New Mexico State University.
And yeah, to the fans, Raptor Nation, just like thank you. I was littlest crowny kid. That's my favorite line. Got drafted to an organization, a different country, not just any team in the NBA. And you guys embraced me from the first day, taking me as one of your own. I felt the responsibility, like when I got to the city, to do good and win because of how important it was to you guys. And just to know that, like, you guys are support from the first day that I put on a Raptors uniform, and that's something that I will always be like forever grateful for. Thank you to Canada as a country. Thank you to Toronto as a city. Thank you to the Tannenbaums, Larry and Judy. Just thank you to the staff and all those people that dedicated, their lives to just helping us and making sure that everything works smoothly. You guys were a great part of winning, and creating a winning culture in Toronto. I grew up here, I came in as a young kid, and just continue to evolve as a man, doing important things in my life. I did it here. And it's something that no matter what team I go to, like, that's always be the story. Like, it will always be Toronto's home, and I just love the legacy that I was able to create here, and the people that I was able to touch. Going through my journey as a Raptor, like, that was always my mindset. Like, I want people to remember my name, like, and I just wanted to prove not only that I belong, but we belong as a team. And that was a motivation for me every single day. I just want to be remembered as someone that gave everything to the city, not only on the basketball court, but also outside of it. PS43 Foundation, creating a platform that's going to help the community. And to me, like, that's my legacy. Like, obviously the basketball accolades and everything is important, but I just want to be remembered as someone that was a leader of the community, helping kids continue to dream. No matter where I'm at, no matter where I play in the NBA, I always want that to be remembered. Coming into Toronto, me feeling like a part of the city, I've embraced everything that it meant to be part of the city. Like, I remember the times where people were saying, oh, the Raptors can't make it to the playoffs, or they can't win the championship, and oh, we don't get the respect that we deserve from American media or like the media around. And to me, like, it felt personal, it hurt, like, because I was part of the community, I was part of the team, and I was embraced, and I embraced everything that it meant to be a Raptor. And all I wanted to do was just go out there and play at the highest level that I could ever play at and win, because I felt like the city deserved it. I felt like the country deserved it.
No fouls to give. Siakam drives, gets past Green, throws it up and in. Pascal Siakam makes it a three-point game.
Like, I couldn't imagine playing for any other team than the Toronto Raptors. Like, that's something that I didn't even dare to think about, because I didn't even imagine myself playing somewhere else. And the moment I had to start thinking about it was probably one of the hardest times, because in my head it was difficult to just think about the idea of leaving. And that's no disrespect, it's just I just never thought about it.
I have to be so careful about the next part of this video. Had a really interesting day as a Raptor fan. Woke up to this very beautifully written Players Tribune article by Pascal Siakam, right? If you haven't read it, I implore you to go read it. It talks about his time in Toronto, his reflections on being a young kid from Cameroon, how hard he's worked, the hopes and dreams he had, winning the championship, the bench mob, the G League, his brother. As a filmmaker, I appreciate really good writing. And this was very good writing. It was written from the perspective of a person who's very heartbroken that they've been dealt from a team that they never envisioned leaving. And correctly or incorrectly, a lot of people have spent today drying their eyes, very sad, very upset, very pissed off at the situation, like small children who can't figure out why Santa Claus didn't come, or perhaps like a small child who can't figure out why mommy and daddy don't sleep in the same bed anymore, and why they're going to be having 2 Thanksgivings from now on. I think it's really important, with situations like this, when a player who's meant a lot to your franchise leaves, that you get really honest about the good and bad of it and not brush everything over in one big smoke of bad or in one big smoke of good. I think when players like Fred VanVleet and Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, I think when they left, everything got painted very bad. Those are bad guys. They did bad things. And it kind of washed away the good, right? But then some guys, when they leave, we paint everything good. Those are the good guys. They did everything right. Everything was wrong about how they left. And the truth is almost always somewhere in the middle, I think. And I'm going to pull myself off screen to say the next part, because I think that it's important to get a very clear, accurate articulation of what has happened. I can't be the only person who who noticed that Masai Ujiri was not mentioned anywhere. This, of course, follows a day after. I just want to paint the context for those viewing in the future. A day ago, Masai Ujiri broke down in tears talking about the relevance and his heart and what it meant to him having Pascal here, winning a championship with him, both of them being from Africa, what Pascal has meant. My success is his success. This enmeshment, heartfelt or not, of people who are very close in sentiment, and it feels a lot like bad theater sometimes if you're being cynical. If you're not being cynical, it just feels like a very, very sad Greek tragedy. I'm going to pull myself off the screen just to say the next part because I wrote it out. I didn't want to say anything out of turn. I don't want to be misquoted, and I certainly don't want to be clipped. So I'm going to pull myself off the screen as I say the next part. This to me is how things ended with Pascal Siakam. Kendrick Perkins announced to the world at the 2021 draft that he was pouring one out for Spicy P. Kendrick is not the sharpest analyst, but Perk knew that the drafting of Scottie Barnes signaled the end of Pascal Siakam north of the border. The Raptors didn't agree at the time, and neither did I. After a strong second half of the season in the 2021-2022 playoffs, the Raptors had a proof of concept that Barnes and Siakam could in fact fit together, even thrive. That even without a fully healthy Fred VanVleet, that they'd push the Sixers to 6 games. Okay. Internal growth for Achua, Anunoby, and especially Barnes, as well as the signing of Otto Porter, that would be enough to improve. Yes, but you don't have a center. We'll get to that. The 2022 offseason featured a ton of Scottie Barnes hype. Some of it, maybe a lot of it, coming from this channel as well. Star and all-star projections for a second-year leap that never really came. Fred VanVleet declined a $104 million offer to him, and OG Anunoby demanded higher usage. Pascal Siakam set his sights on All-NBA and a Supermax, and Gary Trent Jr. came in with big numbers in mind. With 5 starters needing to take large steps and leaps personally, it was inevitable someone would have to take a step back. Initially, those who were forced and asked to take a step back, whether implicitly or explicitly, were Fred and Gary. Cautiously pessimistic about his off-ball role, Fred bought into it for a time. But as his defensive impact slipped and his shooting languished, his patience for Masai's process grew thin. Watching OG and Scottie get much-needed reps as his own production and pending free agency suffered was fine as long as the team was winning. More Siakam and Barnes-initiated offense was fine as long as we were winning. But as Siakam slipped in Dallas and went out with an injury, with OG and Scottie struggling to take the leap from connecting pieces to initiating predator wings, Fred VanVleet slowly took over the offense. it's worth taking a step back for a second and thinking about the offseason just a few months earlier. An offseason which was completely mired in rumors of the Raptors potentially making an offer for Kevin Durant. Those who did not know at the time what was being offered for Kevin Durant, Pascal Siakam was absolutely on board with bringing Kevin Durant to Toronto. In fact, Pascal Siakam believed that Kevin Durant would be his most ideal teammate. Pascal Siakam believed that the Raptors should do whatever it took to get Kevin Durant. So did the media. So did Fred VanVleet. Nobody was against trading for Kevin Durant. But what would it take to get Kevin Durant? It would take Scottie Barnes and a lot else. And the Raptors were not willing to budge. I believe this decision by the Toronto Raptors to bet on Scottie Barnes over a proven all-time MVP candidate, still very serviceable, has annoyed people to an extent that is still being fully felt. It put so much pressure on Scottie to come out and perform like a 25-point per game all-star. And it felt like anything he did, one could always point to, yeah, but Kevin Durant would have been better, wouldn't he? I can't imagine if the Raptors had made the playoffs and perhaps even pushed for a second round, that even that success, if they missed a Game 7 winner, people might be saying, wouldn't Kevin Durant have hit that shot? It is the Brooklyn Nets who are, of course, one of the leakiest organizations in the NBA that surrounded the Raptors with this controversy all summer, which led to what I consider to be a disastrous locker room situation. Nick Nurse, ever the enabler, wished to honor all of his players' individual goals. Siakam's quest for All-NBA would be easier with high minutes and high on-ball usage. OG and Fred would make an impact through two-way contributions, and Scottie, well, he would just struggle to space with a jumper that stopped falling 8 games into the season, struggle with his role, confused, what position does he play, and Gary would struggle as well. The Raptors became a team of individuals playing for numbers and contracts. Gary drew the shortest end of the stick, and Scottie basically iced himself out of the offense unless his team really, really needed him for a fourth quarter, just in order to not get in the way. His teammates needed numbers. It wasn't a team. As Siakam returned, the losses started to pile up. This wasn't the season Masai and Bobby had envisioned. They made a move to help the core, Jakob Poeltl. Instead of tanking when they should have, they worsened their 2023 pick, gave away their 2024 pick, added 2 more seconds, and all of this in order to achieve 3 things. Number 1, a pick and roll partner and screener for Fred VanVleet, who could finally unlock the space he needed to get downhill. Number 2, paint defense to help Siakam with a job he was miserably failing at. And 3, a center to allow Scottie and OG to stop playing center defensively and draining all of their energy on offense. Jakob Poeltl was a gift Masai Ujiri gave in good faith to his team. The rest is history. The Raptors ended the season in disappointing fashion. Barnes hadn't stepped up. OG hadn't gotten his touches and was now even more frustrated. Siakam hadn't made All-NBA, and Fred and Gary were no closer to convincing the Raptors they were worth diving into luxury tax hell. The Raptors massively upped their offer to Fred, but the Rockets made him a better one, so he left. The Raptors attempted to get OG more touches and reps. They weren't pretty. They continued to lose. He left. The Raptors came into this year wanting to see how Siakam could do away from Nurse. Fewer minutes, fewer touches on the ball. They made it known it was going to be Scottie's team, and he bought in. Did he want to? Maybe not, but he did. Early on, for 7 games, he did. But like Fred, he struggled without the ball. His market value was tanking. His supermax was out the door. Would he even land max money shooting the way he was? After Game 7, the Raptors were 3-4 despite Siakam being in an extended shooting drought. The offense shifted away from Barnes and towards Siakam. This was partly because of Barnes. Despite the fact that half the fan base seems to be pitting Scottie and Pascal against each other, what they never realized, or perhaps didn't care to realize, was that Scottie really cared about his teammates, including Pascal. He didn't want his development to get in the way of Siakam getting his next big deal. The Raptors made an offer to Siakam for 3 years at the max. Understandably, Siakam stood firm that he wasn't getting All-NBA, he would at least want the 5 years. Then he found out that even with All-NBA, the Raptors would not offer him the Supermax. Optimists would say Siakam didn't want to leave Toronto, that he preferred to stay. Cynics would say, then why not accept a 3-year max? There was a big divide between who Pascal saw himself as in Toronto and how the Raptors internally and most teams around the league viewed him. Even a 3-year full max presented at least some concerns. But 5 years for a 30-year-old quick twitch athlete with questionable jumper was an extremely rich gamble, one Ujiri and Webster would not be willing to take, especially as this would drastically hamper their ability to build a team around Scottie Barnes. Anunoby is gone because his market was too hot for Toronto to match. VanVleet left because Houston soured on Harden and caved to exceed the Raptors' offer. And Pascal Siakam is an Indiana Pacer because the Raptors decided he wasn't worth a 5-year deal and that he likely wasn't the most optimally suited sidekick for Scottie Barnes long term. I will say the rest of this off script. Sorry, I didn't want to keep myself on the screen as I was reading my own article from earlier, an article that will not be published. The Raptors have fallen into this trap multiple times. They build around non-superstars and somehow allow them to convince themselves that they are superstars. I've listened to a lot of coverage of this from ESPN, from True Hoop Podcast. You get the sense there are no teams other than maybe 2 that were willing to go 5-year max. That number might be as low as 1, literally the team that traded for him. And even that required a very specific situation, which was Tyrese Halliburton saying, "Get me help," and Pascal Siakam being the perfect fit. There was no team out there other than perhaps a dumpster fire like Detroit that was willing to say, Pascal Siakam, 5 years, $50 million, sign us up. Which begs the question, why are people upset that the Raptors did not give him that offer? Why are we living through a storyline in which the Raptors did him dirty, Masai stopped communicating, he wanted to be here forever? This is weird. Now, I understand not everyone is going to be rational about sports, certainly. But I think you need to correct the record. I think you need to stop crying. This was business. What came after was PR. It's PR. Toronto will forever be his biggest market. Please understand that. Apart from Cameroon, nothing he does in Indiana short of winning 2 championships is going to trump his market value in Toronto. He knows this. He is smart. His agents are smart. They know this. On his way out, it does absolutely nothing but career, like potential earnings, like bad mojo later on for him to be anything but extremely romantic about the city of Toronto and tell them everything they want to hear. You see Kyle Lowry do the same thing. It's the same playbook, okay? If you had an off-the-cuff conversation with Kyle Lowry about how he always felt about the Raptors organization or how he felt about being in Toronto long-term, man, that guy had his eye out the door several times. But that's okay. Why must we build the myth? Why? I mean, do we forget that before he became the GOAT, that most fans were like, trade this guy. He's a playoff choker. Can't go that far if your best player is 6 feet tall. Blah, blah, blah. Right? when you wash over the history of the truth of it, right? When you make Vince this bad guy who just quit, you wipe out all the community service, all the highs, there's so much nuance that comes into it. And we don't want that, though, do we? We don't want to have complex opinions about characters that we root for on television. Our lives are complicated enough. Why can't the guy on TV either be the idiot or the smart guy? Why can't he be the good guy or the bad guy? And quite frankly, I just think that there needs to be a little more balance here. Pascal Siakam is not a saint in this situation, nor is he the villain. He is not selfish. He is a rational person. A rational person would try to get the most money possible. The irrational person decides that you need to be the team that gives them the most money possible. The irrational fan right now is saying, well, why didn't we give him that money? We could have given that money. We did him dirty. He deserved it. He won a championship here. Okay. Did you have this feeling when we traded Norman Powell? Or was he just he's not big enough a part of the championship, I guess? Did you have this feeling when we didn't extend an offer to Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, just let them walk? You realize those guys wanted to come back too, right? Marc Gasol wanted to be here. You think he wanted to leave? We didn't want to offer him the money. He wanted too much money, so he left. There was no media frenzy. There was no crying. There was nothing. Marc Gasol was a very, very important part to why you won the championship. What is it about the Pascal thing that's so hitting home? I think, I could be wrong. I think people identify with him just as people identify with Fred. Rags to riches. It could have been anybody. They worked super hard. Maybe one day it'll be me. It's like watching, a video of a squirrel stuck in a fence. You root for the squirrel. Right? Like when we watch National Geographic and there's the star of the show is like the lion. You're rooting for the lion to hunt. But if the star of the show is gazelle, you would turn it around very quickly. You'd be rooting for the gazelle to get away. My point is the perspective of stories is very important and how they're framed is very important. And in here, I am very, very carefully trying to not frame Pascal Siakam as a bad person or a bad guy. He's not the bad guy. He's not the bad guy in this situation. He's just a rational guy who's going to Indiana. But I don't appreciate the need to have to paint one person as bad to make the other person good. And I don't necessarily think that you should pay too much attention to the manipulative nature of the writing and the coverage and that farewell, and everything that's come out about it. And even the complete waterworks performance that was Masai Ujiri's presser. I have no doubt that it was hard for him to trade him. I have no doubt about that. But this need to paint yourself as this tortured, person who has to make this really tough decision. Look, I have no doubt it's hard. No doubt it's hard. But certainly Masai Ujiri is a very, very practiced business person. He certainly didn't need to do that in front of the media, but of course, this is a need to change and control the narrative away from what it would have become had he not done his press conference first. Do you understand what I mean? His press conference paints him as sorrowful, mourning guy who is not about the business, not about the money. He didn't necessarily say, we offered him 3, he rejected it, we can't afford it. He just, danced around it like politicians do. We needed to maintain the financial flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. And Pascal Siakam completely ignored the part that he was offered, a contract. They didn't want to offer me extension. Incorrect. False. That's not true. They did offer you an extension. It wasn't the one you wanted. You wanted to make a supermax, and they said they wouldn't supermax you. And that is, to me, thank God. Because there are almost no teams that outside of very extreme circumstances, and the Indiana Pacers are an extreme circumstance team. Why are they an extreme circumstance team? Number one, they are a small market. Number two, they have a budding, ascending superstar in Tyrese Halliburton. Number 3, they have a bunch of young players who are very underpaid. Number 4, Miles Turner is underpaid. They can afford him. It's just like Fred VanVleet last year. A lot of people want to say they run with this narrative. The Raptors lost Fred VanVleet for nothing. What is the alternative? What was the alternative? Sign him to $40 million? Would you really be happier? Would it make you better? Would it make you feel better if right now you had Scotty Barnes ascending the way he is, and you had long-term $40 million a year, or even $35 million a year tied up for Fred VanVleet, and $45 million coming up for Pascal Siakam, and $40 million? Do you realize that Vince Carter left precisely because the Raptors did this exact same thing with Jerome Williams, Antonio Davis, and all these, Lamont Murray, those guys? They hamstrung themselves and they couldn't build around their ascending star. Learn from the past. It is baffling to me that really smart people in this Raptors community are crying their eyes out at this fluff piece. And fine, it's from the heart. There's a lot of things about it that I really, really appreciate. I didn't know about him. But to use this as some sort of, he wanted to be here over anything. It's like, no, man. No. That's not what happened. And don't let it trick you. Don't do that thing where you completely, because you're losing it. You're losing the plot. There's actually something very beautiful about a person making $250 million next year. That's a good part of the story. Don't wash that away and make him some sort of martyr victim who got traded away from the team he never wanted to leave. That's not true. That's politics. He would prefer to stay. If he could have stayed, he would have stayed if the dollar was right. Right? And the Raptors would have loved to keep him if the dollars were right. Why can't we just say that? Why can't we just say that Pascal Siakam and the Toronto Raptors had a wildly different interpretation of what type of money he was worth? Is that so wrong to say that? Does that make anyone bad or anyone good? Does that make the Raptors stingy and cheap? Does that put, too much heat on MLSE? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly okay. And what's wrong with Pascal Siakam saying, I wanted the 5-year, they gave me the 3-year, I believe I'm worth the 5 years, so I'm leaving. What's with all this other shit? Let's not cap, okay? I wanted to be I wanted to do everything for Toronto. I cared about the fans so much. I did this, I did that. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that you cared about the fans at some point. I don't doubt that you wanted to be here. I don't doubt that you cared about your teammates. I don't doubt that you worked super hard. I don't doubt that this was a very meaningful city to you and an experience that you will never forget. None of those things are, however, the point. The point is the framing of this entire day has become a smear campaign almost against the Raptors. Everyone's upset. Why? It's like he did the same thing DeMar did. He divided Toronto and he divided it from Masai and the Raptors organization, right? He thanked the city, he thanked the fans. So, la-di-da, for a fan base that has been historically paranoid, if not crippled by this anxiety that players don't want to be here. To have a person stoke your insecurities by saying, I wanted to be here forever, of course you're going to fall for it. You remember how mad people were when Goran Dragic didn't want to come here? They bitched about it for a year because he said he had higher aspirations. What was wrong with that? What's wrong with having higher aspirations? He wanted to win a championship. Were the Raptors going to win a championship? No. So what's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? All of these guys had higher aspirations. Pascal Siakam had higher aspirations, did he not? Toronto could offer him 3 years. They said, we'll offer you 3 years. We want to maintain the flexibility. We don't want to give you the supermax. He had higher aspirations. You know what? If he somehow blitzes the end of this season and he makes All-NBA, which he could, by the way, he very well could, just an FYI, they will pay him the supermax. That should make you think. What was this really about? Was this about love? Was this about loving the city that you never ever wanted to leave? He sounds like a person, like a puppy who was given away. I don't think that's right. So I would like to say, regardless of how much hate this video is going to get, and man, every time I mention Siakam, 80 unsubscribes, fine. Unsubscribe. That's okay. I just want to say this from the heart. I want to keep it 100. Keep it a stack. Keep it a buck. There are no bad guys and good guys here. It was just business. You move on. Okay? Let's check the comments. There's 190 comments. Do I want to check these comments? Okay. Cool. Anyways, I want to take a moment to just talk about where I think the Raptors are today, because I think they're in a much better place than they were 2 days ago. I also want to mention to you that 2 things are going to happen today. Number one, Pascal Siakam is going to play basketball today. He's going to play for the Indiana Pacers. And the other thing that's going to happen today is I have a feeling they're going to wipe the floor with the Portland Trail Blazers, and Siakam's going to have a really big game. I'm getting that feeling. This Players Tribune article coming out, everything. He is a very stats conscious and very market conscious human being. I would expect nothing less than 25 to 30 points from him. Honestly, with the state of that team, my God, I wouldn't be surprised if he had like 50 points. There was something I was supposed to do prior to this live, which I forgot to do, and now I have to do while I'm talking. So I'm going to look down and try to multitask while I'm doing this. So I'm going to try to talk, and I'm going to try to attach these things so that I can share them with you. But there's some interesting data that came out today, and I really wanted to be able to share that with you guys. So a couple things worth noting. The Raptors have been pretty good, like pretty decent. And also something worth noting is that Scotty Barnes in high usage situations has been really good too. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen for a second so we can go through. No, I don't think I want to do that. If you guys mind, just give me like 1 second. I just want to do this. I feel like really weird asking for 1 second on a live stream. Also, like, I don't know if you guys are following us on Twitter/X. It's very different content, and you definitely should. You should follow us. It's completely different. It's not like I just aggregate and repost the same shit on both sides or whatever. There's a lot of content creators who do that, right? I'm having a completely different life on Instagram, a completely different life on Twitter, and a completely different life on YouTube. Sure, sometimes you might see a YouTube mention on Twitter, but like most of it is just really different. Where the hell is it? Gosh, I tweeted a lot today. Damn. That's a lot of... Okay, so a couple quick things. To the people who are talking about Scotty's... Okay, I'm going to pull up X, man. I can't... hang on 1 second. Okay, Kayla, shut up and stop messaging me, bro. Sorry about that. Okay, X. Sorry, basketball. What's up? Okay. Okay, so first things first, vote.nba.com. Today's 3 times the votes. Vote for Scotty Barnes. Yeah, it's a last-ditch effort. I can't help but think that the Toronto Raptors media, social media team was a little bit late to the draw. All day, my phone's blowing up with one celebrity after another celebrity. Vote North over everything. Vote Scotty Barnes. Scotty's our guy. And it's just like, bro, where was this 2 months ago? Where was this 2 weeks ago? Sorry, like 2-3 weeks ago. This could have made a difference. I mean, a couple of my friends, they have season tickets. They say, like, a few years ago for Kyle and DeMar, whatever, they used to make you vote in arena. I remember that too. Used to sit down, they'd be like, vote for your all-stars right now. That's been missing this year. They don't care. And this is very disappointing. Canada's a very big country. Toronto's a very big city. We could have done this. Sad. Anyways. If you want a Pascal Siakam jersey, you can get it now for $44. I do not have a Pascal Siakam jersey. I don't think I'm going to get one, but you definitely should. And if Raptors PR, if you ever watch this, you might. Here's a great business idea. February 14th, Pascal Siakam back in town. Everything he mentioned about counting jerseys. Use this opportunity to give every single person who attends a Pascal Siakam jersey. It's such a worth it endeavor. You will be like the talk of NBA world as such a good organization, and it costs you jack shit. You should do it. You should absolutely do it. Those jerseys are worth like $8, man. Come on. Don't be silly billies. Okay. The turnover police. People who are like, oh my God, Scotty Barnes had so many turnovers yesterday. Yes, turnovers happen when you handle the ball a lot. So I mentioned earlier today, Jokic had 9 turnovers against Memphis. LeBron had 8 against Sacramento. No, not 10 years ago. This season. Okay? So we're going to have to deal with a few turnovers. Now, this was the post that I really wanted to bring up. Scotty's had 11 games, including last night, with 28.5% usage. His box plus minus in those games is superstar stuff. Here's the full list. Do you see it? So against Denver, 12.4. That's against Jokic. It was a pretty healthy Denver team. Chicago last night, 10.4. Boston, 8.0. Utah was the only negative game in the whole bunch, which was negative 4.5. But the next Utah game was 5.7. Then he had a 17.3 against Charlotte, and Milwaukee 13.6 against Giannis and the Bucks. Then there was an Atlanta game with 5.6. Milwaukee again 10.6. He really just loves going up against Giannis. I don't get it. San Antonio 10.5, and of course Miami, the team that he kind of grew up rooting for. Well, not really grew up rooting for, but like grew up around. Is a positive 2.8. I will tell you something really interesting about these numbers. There are 2 games that are very, what I call marquee games. They're not marquee because of the competition. They're marquee because of the market. And the games were last night against Chicago, national TV game, and also the Victor Wembanyama game. In both games, he crossed 30 points. Interesting to note. Both games, he was pretty much 10.5 box plus minus. They were 2 of the best games he's played all year. And I think it's interesting. I remember, I think in Vince's second year, he put up like 51 points in his first national TV game against the Phoenix Suns, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember thinking back then, I might have been in Toronto, I might have been in New York, I can't remember. I think I might have just moved to Toronto or something. I remember thinking back then, this guy's like really got some stage presence about him. Like he's going to rise up in big moments. And then, of course, playoffs after playoffs, Vince just rose to the big moments. Some guys have another dial that they can just dial it up. Scotty has another dial, which is really cool. I'm going to pull up some data. Do you guys say data or data? I don't think you're going to be able to tell me on this. Give me one sec here. So I'm going to pull up some data on the Raptors offense from B-Ball Index and show you like some really encouraging, cool stuff. You said, oh, Jacinto data. Cool. That is cool to know. Okay. All right. Let me just pull this up. Okay. Oh, man. Also, we are super close to, I think, 7,900 subscribers, which means we are also really, really close to 8,000 subscribers, which is really cool because like exactly a month ago, we didn't have 7,000 subscribers. So that's really cool. Okay. So transition offense. So I want to talk about shot quality for a second, relative to basically efficiency. So stable transition points per possession, right? So how efficient are you goes up, and then how efficient in theory is the shot that you're taking goes across. Now, naturally, there's a correlation, a very positive correlation between having higher quality shots and more of them going in. Interestingly enough, for the Raptors in almost every offensive set, they are taking better shots than the results suggest. So that's transition. This is half court. Look at the half court shot making. It's like dead to the bottom for the Raptors. but their half-court shot quality is top 5 in the league. Just barely behind the Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks. I mean, do you know what the Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks, Trae Young and the Hawks, Donovan Mitchell and, the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know what all those teams have in common? They have superstars. Luka, Trae, Jason Tatum, plus Jaylen Brown, plus Kristaps Porzingis, right? The stacked Boston Celtics, plus Donovan Mitchell, So I'm very curious to see if this half-court shot making, which I'm told is going to fall off a cliff without Siakam, is going to stick around. I have a feeling it will. Here's something interesting. Mid-range field goal percentage versus mid-range shot quality. The Raptors create by far the most efficient mid-range shots in the league. It's not even close. But they're not that efficient at it. I mean, they're pretty efficient at it, but they're not that efficient at it. What about shots at the rim? Oh my God, there's another Raptors leading. Yeah, they're pretty efficient at the rim, but they're not. But they're creating the most. What Masai Ujiri said was, what we're doing with Darko is it feels sustainable. Here's the 3-point shot quality behind only the OKC Thunder, who have a very, very interesting way of getting their threes. So what I'm saying is, hey man, you're a good team. Oh, by the way, note where Philly is. The Philadelphia 76ers with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Look at where they are in quality of shots. Just look at where they are in rim quality, 3-point quality. I just want you to look at the 7-6. Just please look at the 7-6 for my own sanity. Please look at the 7-6. Because I'm sick and tired of people saying Nick Nurse is like a better coach. Just look at it. Pure quality, right? Where are the 76ers here? Where are the 76ers here? And where are the 76ers here? You see my point? Sometimes you're good. Sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes you're unlucky. And I think the Raptors, for the most part, have been really, really freaking unlucky with a lot of their offense and defense sometimes. It can happen, sometimes where you generate great shots. Every single offense should aim to create layups and dunks at the rim and open. The more open the layup, the better it is. So how do you measure how open a layup is? Well, how close is the closest defender? Tracking data. Same thing with threes. You want to generate open corner threes. You want to do that. Assisted open corner threes, great shot. Every offense will love a steady diet of those two types of shots, right? You also don't mind a pull-up jump shot for one of your better shooters when he's pretty much wide open coming off of a pin down. I'm saying that there's a way to create great offense, and then there's a completely separate answer on whether it'll go in or not. These are two different parts of the equation, and the coaching is getting the great shot. It's producing the great shot, is making the adjustments. Regardless of how I feel about Dennis Schroeder, he has been functionally better than a replacement level player. And that's kind of like what a mid-level is, right? Like, he's been good. He's outperformed his contract. I have a lot of issues with how he's led, with the stupid jersey thing, ton of stuff. Some of his minutes, why is he playing, blah, 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 blah. So what I want to say is that I think there is a really big difference between how fans think about team building, players, what looks good and what is right on the basketball court, and how hopefully NBA coaches and front office scouts think. In terms of where are the Raptors now, and I'll end it on that. Honestly, this is going to be a super long live. I really don't want to be talking forever, to be honest. I think I've had a lot of time on the mic, and I would appreciate maybe a night to not have to do that. However, I will ask this community, if I did a live at like 10 o'clock, like a trade machine live for an hour where I took in trades from various teams and callers for the remaining pieces that could be expendable on our team, like Bruce Brown and Gary Trent and, I don't know, Chris Boucher and stuff like that, would you guys be open to that type of show? Let me know. Paul Blunt traded up. Oh shit. Yeah. After the Pacers game. That would actually be really, really smart. Yeah, maybe we should do like a Pacers post game and just break down how the new look Pacers look. All right, cool. That's awesome. Okay, that's nice. I maybe should like do this live and then take a little bit of a nap because I've been up since 7 a.m. But yeah, I think I'll have juice at that point. I'm drinking coffee right now. That means I'm awake for the next 4 hours at least. And I'm definitely watching that Pacers game. All right, where are the Raptors right now? Well, there's a lot of really interesting things about the Raptors right now in terms of their cap flexibility, what they can do going into this summer. Don't rule out being an option for OG Anunoby to come back. It felt like a joke like a couple of weeks ago when I made that video. The Raptors are playing 4D chess and you know how OG could come back to the Raptors. But I'm telling you, man, fire your agent. All bets are off. Jack Armstrong was asked on the Bob McCowan show, could they bring Pascal or OG back? Right now, Pascal, no way. He's not coming back because you're not giving him what he wants money wise. The Pacers are. That ship has sailed. For OG, right, a very smart, very articulate guy who did not write a teary-eyed 5,000 word, essay penned to the Raptors, and maybe some people were kind of killing him over that, like, oh my God, he only left like 3 words or whatever. For OG, yeah, he can come back. He can absolutely come back. Paradise Lost saying OG won't do that. Look, man, you don't know that. You don't know what the relationship between OG and Scotty's like. You just don't know. Like, you can say, yeah, that would be really crazy. How would he do that? But it's like, what is there to lose? What is there to lose? It's the ultimate FU. And Jack Armstrong said, there's technically nothing stopping them, but teams don't. And then McCowan was like, why don't people do this? And I realized 29,000 people watched that video on OG Anunoby, the Raptors are playing 4D chess. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Bob McCowan watched my video because he brought up a lot of points from that video. And I didn't hear this talking point anywhere else about like OG could come back, Pascal can come back. But suddenly now everyone's talking about it and the Raptors are clearing up all this cap space. And I'm like, oh man, the Raptors are one OG Anunoby away from being a really good team. And I know an OG Anunoby, and apparently so does Scotty Barnes. And they're really tight. And so does Masai. And they're really tight. And OG wanted a bigger role in offense. And now we can suddenly give him one because we don't have Pascal and we don't have Fred here. Wouldn't that be interesting? Okay, I digress. Fantasy aside, I love OG. I want him back. But anyways. Jacinto, think of it this way. Who has ever come back? Think of it this way. What is Chat GPT 4 years ago? It's not real until it's real, bro. There's always a verse for everything. Okay, Ricky Rubio went back. There's an example of someone who went back. Okay, like you can go back. There's really the entire city of New York would hate him. If I could think of one player in the world who does not give a shit about that would be OG. Number one. Number two, the reason that Jack Armstrong presented was it's bad business. Like it would tarnish the relationship between the two teams. And I'm just like, the Raptors have no relationship with the New York Knicks. None. If nothing else, if you really think about it, we took RJ's contract back from them, right? We did. Let's be honest. They didn't want to give Emmanuel Quickley $25 million. Can we be real about that? If the Raptors really, really wanted to do this, they could have absolutely gone after Emmanuel Quickley in restricted free agency. Clear up the cap space. The Knicks aren't going to match $32 million. All you have to do is overpay Emmanuel Quickley, and you would have gotten him in restricted free agency because they were not extending him. Do you get that? You know how far 18 million, what they wanted to pay him was 18 million. If you really wanted him and he wanted 25, all you have to do is pay him 28. And you're taking RJ's contract? I don't think there's anything wrong with even taking OG back. What did they give you? Come on, man. Mark Anderson. Meh. Delusion. Oh, you're back. How did you come back? Raps fans 6996. Did you call in last year? Why do I look at that picture and I just kind of like have like this vomity response? There must be something. Anyways, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this roster that we have here. So you have RJ Barrett, extended. Let's see how much Manuel quickly comes in on. Scotty Barnes, extension eligible this summer, possibly signs that extension. Maybe they push it off a little bit. I don't know. If he makes All NBA, I think like it's a super max extension, but he's probably not going to make All NBA this year. So we'll see. Point is, you have about 36 million without clearing anything right now. But the Raptors could be sellers. They could be sellers at this deadline. If they continue to lose, there's like a pretty bad road trip coming up. Look, man, like might have to kiss that Spurs pick goodbye either way and try to build good habits, but you can still be sellers at the deadline and try to get pieces that make a little bit more sense for your roster and how you want to play. I do also want to say Bruce Brown is a hell of a player, but he's also a hell of a trade chip for a team that's looking to get off of maybe, to boost their playoff odds. Like Bruce Brown just helps you win. I'm thinking of teams like LA. I'm not sure what they would give up. They have a pick. They have a first round pick that they could potentially dangle and maybe a longer term contract. Can you do some version of what the OKC Thunder did? I'll give you an example. You have expirings, tons of them. You've built this up. I have a feeling this deal was done now so that the next set of deals could be done at the deadline. Let me tell you what I mean. You have Thaddeus Young. He's an expiring. You didn't have to let him come to this team. Like you could have replaced him easily. You let him stay on this team even though his contract was not guaranteed because you wanted him as a trade chip. The flexibility of an expiring contract is not just theoretical. It is actually true that teams will sometimes look to get 1 year off of their books by going 1 year early. Okay. What do I mean by this? Well, I think it also, there's a catch-22 here. Let me just negate myself for a second. People want cap space typically when there's something that they're chasing in free agency. Now, will some team out there think, hey, with OG and Pascal pretty much off the market right now, with the wink that Pascal is different. Pascal's not coming back. I'll tell you 100% he's not coming back, and he's not going anywhere but Indiana, because I knew like all the way through that 5 years is all he cared about. He cared about 5 years. He wants a Supermax. If he gets Supermax in Indiana, Supermax, like I identified this weeks ago. I said if he's smart, he would go to Indiana. If I was his agent, I would push him towards Indiana because it's the one team that the pace and the success of that team could allow him to actually get All NBA. It's a shock that he didn't do it sooner. Really, it's a shock. Had he done it sooner, he might have actually already been in the conversation for All NBA, thereby already been in the market for Supermax. Might have cost yourself a lot of money there, Pascal, by kind of dragging this out. That being said, I think also what happened in the in-season tournament to Tyrese Halliburton, kind of like him getting clamped, I think it gave them like a lot of worry because it was such a big deal, because a lot of people watched it and they were just like, oh, see, Tyrese Halliburton's a fraud. And then, of course, like all the talk about, getting there. And then Tyrese is like, I'm ready now. I'm ready to win now. I'm tired of losing, blah, 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 blah. And so the Indiana Pacers were just like, hey, we're a pretty small market team. Kevin Pritchard read the room and he was just like, hey, we have a star. We think people are going to like being here, blah, 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 blah. Interesting. Moving on. I don't think anyone's going to. Basically, Pascal wanted a 5-year. That's as far as I can say. That's what I've maintained for the last few months, that basically whichever team held him was going to be able to sign him. The problem is you're holding an asset, if you're the Raptors, that you didn't want. Now you're holding expirings. You don't want them. You don't want these expirings to just expire because you are Toronto. And unless you have a definitive idea that you will definitely be able to attract an OG Anunoby, or maybe you have some intel on a Paul George or something like that, there probably isn't much of a reason for you to operate as a team with cap space. So, it's worth noting that you will be able to open up more cap space by trading a player like Chris Boucher, but also you can go the other way by trading expirings for deals that are maybe a little bit longer, like 2 years instead of 1 year, and giving a team a serviceable player like a Gary Trent Jr. or Bruce Brown. I think the Raptors have a ton of assets that maybe are not being valued properly by fans. But I've listened today throughout the day. I listened to like 8 hours of NBA content today, and I made a point to go and listen to every other team's podcast. So not a lot of Raptors content today. More like, hey, what are the Pistons fans talking about? What are what are the podcasters for the Indiana Pacers talking about? What is the analyst for the Denver Nuggets talking about? And then you get a feel of like what these teams really need. Where are they struggling, right? And I think that the Raptors, specifically Gary Trent Jr., Otto Porter, and Chris Boucher and Bruce Brown, these 4 pieces right there, those 4, every one of those pieces could, in theory, net you at least a first-round pick. It could be a really bad first-round pick. It could be like a really, really super late first-round pick. There might be more involved in it. You might have to swap out a future second to get that first, but you can get firsts for these guys. Now, some people say I'm crazy. How could you possibly get a first for Chris Boucher? Well, it depends on the team, depends on their situation, right? Good teams may want to get out of this draft. Now, I will say this also. The Raptors were not enthused about the 2024 draft up until 2 weeks ago. According to Michael Grange, they, even 2 weeks ago, did not like this draft. And per his read on the situation, which is almost always incorrect, they do not see a reason to stay in this draft. I disagree. I think that there is something that they like in this draft, but also that they are not enamored with this draft enough to pick 3 times in it. So I think that every one of these is a trade piece. And if you were hypothetically able, let's just say you were able to do, I'll give you an example. Let's say you were able to do Chris Boucher in one deal and Gary Trent Jr. in another deal to teams that were starved for either shooting or a competent bench big. And let's say you pulled back, at the very least, a pick swap, or probably more likely, a couple of seconds, a first, whatever. You build up that draft equity, right? You keep building up the war chest. Now, at the trade deadline, you can make a really, really competitive offer for something that you really want. What do I mean by competitive offer? I mean 4 first-round picks and Bruce Brown for Lauri Markkanen. Something like that. Like a big offer. 4 first-round picks are nothing, not nothing. And one should not sneeze at that, right? If you want to think about it this way, I know we really like Emmanuel Quickley, but had the Raptors gone for the Knicks' first offer of RJ Barrett plus 2 first-round picks, the Raptors would have extracted 5 first-round picks for OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, as well as Bruce Brown and RJ Barrett. Think about that. Right? So, I mean, it's just worth thinking about sometimes. Bert, thank you for the super chat, by the way. If our front office had traded at the deadline in 2022, would this have ended differently? In the presser following the trade deadline, Masai said it wasn't the right year for this group. I don't think the team ever forgot this. I don't understand what you mean by in the presser following the trade deadline. Like last year? I don't remember him saying it wasn't the right year for this group. I don't understand. I would love to answer your question. I'm just trying to understand what you mean fully. If our front office had traded the deadline, would this have ended differently? Wasn't the right... Watch the presser from 2022. Well, 2022 was the year they traded for Thaddeus Young, was it not? 2021 draft, 2022. Yeah, that was the Thaddeus Young. After the trade deadline where he did nothing with a beat-up club. Well, hold on. We've traded for Thaddeus Young on one deadline and Jakob Poeltl on the second deadline. prior to that, we're talking like 2021 or 2020, like 2020. Hold on. We've been active at almost every single deadline. We've been a deadline team every year, haven't we? Hold on. 2020, we traded for, 2021 deadline, we traded for Gary Trent Jr. Right? Okay. So you're effectively saying like he didn't do enough. Okay. Right. It wasn't the right year. Okay, now I can read your thing again. All right, let me just, so now that I understand that you don't consider Thaddeus Young anything, we can move forward. Is our front office had traded at the deadline 2022? Would this have ended differently in the presser following? Okay, I don't think so. I think what would you have traded for? Like a Jakob Poeltl at that time? Look, man, I think there's like a strange sort of like politics in the NBA that it's really hard to get one player to jump another player in the pecking order. Like it's really difficult, right? Paradise Lost. Pascal's coming back on Valentine's to break our hearts. I don't think so. Jacinto saying honestly could have done Lowry for Maxey, right? I've always heard that wasn't real. So I don't know where that came from. I don't know why that's always out there. If that was the case, man, but I don't think so. Hushu saying, I hope I'm saying that right. Thanks for doing these. Learn a lot from these lives. Yeah, my pleasure, man. I've gone over an hour and I really didn't want to. I'm trying to wrap my head around this question. I'm just trying to figure out like what I have to say about it, because I don't want to I do really want to honor the super chat, because you've clearly paid $20 for an opinion, and I would love to give you a great one that is highly articulate and very meaningful and super fresh and will blow your mind. But I can't seem to figure this out. Okay, try to figure this out again. I think that core was flawed. Why do I think it was flawed? Partially because I think the pieces didn't fit and they were succeeding in very strange ways. And I think even last year, you could say they succeeded in very strange ways. There was some abnormal, schedule luck towards the end of the season. They beat up on some really bad teams. I think the Raptors have just underestimated or overestimated how good Pascal Siakam was. Perhaps they've even overestimated how good OG Anunoby was. And they underestimated how good Scottie Barnes would be. There's been a lot of miscalculations on this team's side. Now, that being said, what could you have realistically traded for? And that's, I guess, what I would have wanted to know. Because it's one thing to say they should have traded, or if they had traded at the deadline, but traded what? Traded what for who? Like, I don't want to pull a Darko, but like who, what, where, You mean like trade multiple firsts for like a serious win now move? I guess that depends on what the win now move is. I really don't like playing the game of draft roulette where you trade off like 3 picks and it's like super far off into the future and you're just like, oh, credit card debt. That's never gonna be a problem. And it ends up being a pretty big problem. Now, I'm a pretty risk averse person when it comes to finance, so maybe I'm not like the perfect person to be like, sometimes I should go bigger and should take a bigger risk, and I won't. I'm pretty like risk management conscious. So I don't believe in doing that. I don't believe in mortgaging the whole future for like a potential, because, Achilles tears happen and MCL tears happen, and flexibility is a very, very good thing to maintain as long as you can maintain it. And if you don't want to maintain it, there must be a great reason to go for it. And I don't think Fred VanVleet and Scottie Barnes in his rookie year and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby were winning a championship that year. It's just my opinion. So if they're not winning a championship, why do more? What is the piece that you could realistically attain, even with 2 first-round picks in that scenario? I mean, granted, you gave up 1 first-round pick for Thaddeus Young. Would you have given up 2? I mean, that's the problem, right? Here's the point. Right now, the Raptors are very, very competent front office, right? There's a lot of respect around the league. that Scottie Barnes is a pretty good player, that this team's probably going to be pretty good in the future, right? That drastically impacts the value of your outbound future firsts. Unfortunate or fortunate, people expect the 2028 Toronto Raptors first round pick to be a pretty bad pick. Same thing with their 2026 first round pick or anything else they could be dangling right now. The only pick that's valuable to the Raptors right now, ironically, is the one they've already traded, which is their current 2024 pick, because it looks bad right now. But if you ask an average general manager right now, do you want the Raptors 2025 first round pick, or do you want the Charlotte Hornets 2025 first round pick? They probably pick the Hornets first round pick. Why? Is it because LaMelo and Brandon Miller are trash? No, of course not. Is it because the Hornets are definitely going to be trash? No, because you trust an organization like the Raptors to be more successful long term, and the further out you project, the more hypothetical success you ascribe to the team. There goes, I have given you, I believe, a very articulate answer in which I'm saying that the Raptors' future firsts are always worth less than most teams' future firsts. Just like the Warriors' future firsts for years were worth less than most teams, because people just assumed that, hey, Steph is a really good player and this team usually finds a way to be good. So even those like really bad years, had they traded those picks out in advance, they would have never gotten the value for it. The best way to do this, by the way, if I was a general manager or a brilliant, owner, what I would do is I would hire a super incompetent general manager for like a week, right? This is why I've never, gosh. I would hire them for a week and I'd have them do like a trade that was really stupid. And then I would have them dangle like future picks, like maybe pick swaps. I think I would dangle pick swaps. I would have them trade like a whole bunch of pick swaps. I would make those pick swaps and then I would fire that general manager and hire myself. At which point, ultimately, the value of those swaps would go down the drain. You see, it does help to have someone who has like a real smart, I would say like a real significant finance background in your front office, because again, like, here's the thing. I struggle with emotion sometimes. Like, I didn't cry when I was reading Pascal's Players Tribune article. I don't think I would I don't think I'm going to cry if I read Scotty's, Player Tribune article someday. I didn't cry when I read his Dear Toronto, hey, what's good Toronto one. I mean, I've been following Scottie Barnes for a very long time. It's a very emotional thing for him to be drafted here. I probably cared more about Scottie getting drafted here than 90% of the fans care about Siakam leaving. I haven't cried about it. I didn't cry when they won the championship. It's not like I'm not saying I'm incapable of crying. I'm just saying, like, it's what in the world in sports is going to make me cry? I have never thought about it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can be like really excited about it. You can be really emotional about it. I certainly have like absolutely been pissed for half a day because of something the Raptors did or didn't do. That I can tell you, I've had an emotional response to it. I just don't understand crying about it. Not that there's anything wrong with crying at all, William Liu and everyone else who was just like, I'm in tears and whatever. I think people are just sort of like virtue signaling at this point, or they're just sharing, in which case, fine. I don't get the point of crying. A guy is making $250 million to play basketball for the next 5 years of his life. He will retire as probably not a Hall of Famer, but he'll probably retire as one of the 300 best basketball players, the 450 best basketball players ever. He's probably going to make a lot more money in Indiana than he would have here, because I think there's a sneaky chance he makes All-NBA this year. Again, it's based on health. Paradise Lost. I cried a little in the bathroom. Yo, at least you cried in the bathroom. You cried with dignity. I appreciate that. I cried also for Norman, I admit. Cool. I love DeMar DeRozan. When he got traded for Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard, I was like, damn, I was pissed for like half a day. And then it just, that Alonzo Mourning meme, or was he's just like, that was basically me in 7 hours. I was like, damn, they traded DeMar. I've been following him since Compton High. I've been following him since USC. And then it was just like, damn, Kawhi's a really good player.
That's funny. All right. Abu, I'm optimistic about the 2026 Indy pick. That might actually be the most valuable pick in this entire package. Obviously, the Indiana Pacers believe it's going to be a terrible pick, but I'll tell you what, it's a pretty good draft. It's a pretty damn good draft, and that's the one pick I don't want them to trade. That's the one pick, because if somehow, some way, the Indiana Pacers end up being like a late lottery team that year, and you end up being like let's say like a middling first round team, like you have the 16th pick and maybe the 10th pick in that draft, holy shit. And you're right in that you're entering Scotty Barnes extension time when you're like really, really not capped out, but like it's getting tight, $60 million, $50 million, whatever for a certain player, and then $30 million, you're getting tight. And then to have those 2 first rounders in that draft, oh my God, that is a very, very valuable thing to have. I don't want them to trade that, but I have no problem with them trading the 2 2024 first rounders that they got in this one. And I also have no problem with them getting more picks. I like draft picks, not for the same reason that other people do, because I think they offer a tremendous amount of flexibility. And I am looking forward to doing my first Indiana Pacers post-game live. We just did our Detroit Pistons post-game live when the Detroit Pistons won, if you remember, without Cade Cunningham. I thought it was fantastic. It was really cool. I got a whole bunch of comments later from like, oh, you should do more Pistons game. And I was just like, no, thanks. No, thanks. I just wanted to do one. So we'll do our first Indiana Pacers post-game live today. And what we will do is it'll be a 2-parter. So one, take like a 10, 15 minute thing to talk about how Pascal Siakam did in his first game in Indiana. Please understand, this channel has developed a very, very nasty reputation for like hating on Pascal Siakam. And if you look past look at our past videos, I think you'll probably say that's earned. I've earned it. Never hated Pascal Siakam, just really, really strongly believed that he wasn't worth the money. That was it. He wasn't worth the money, wasn't worth the usage, wasn't as good as people thought he was. However, tonight he is going to have a dominant stretch, and I have no doubt that he's going to put up really big numbers in Indiana. And I think you guys are going to just have to deal with Raptors Nation having a bit of an aneurysm if the Raptors continue to lose and the Indiana Pacers continue to win and the Knicks continue to win, and especially when those teams come here and then they beat us, then it's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe we got rid of these guys for this bum Scotty Barnes. But please understand, the Raptors are building something really good here. I promise you, like, if you're a member of this community, if you trust me, if you trust my basketball mind at all, the Raptors are going to be fine. They're in a much better place today than they were 3 weeks ago. Okay? Peace, guys. Have a good one. I'll see you in a few hours. I'm going to catch some Z's before Pascal Siakam takes on the Portland Trailblazers. That's going to be fun. All right. See you guys.